Dan and I like won't talk to each other about stuff before the episode in a lot of cases, just because like when we're doing the Battletron review, some of the things we want to be like a genuine reaction between the two of us. Like we'll talk about like what we want the structure to be, but we rarely talk about like the contents of some specific subject matter before we get going. So like when we're in that room, we start to talk about that a little bit, and we start getting going, and then sometimes that's where we miss the button push, because his wife, who's our secret third host, is always just in the room hanging out, and she'll look at us. She's like, "You're just gonna talk about this in 10 minutes. Just turn on the microphone."
Well, that's how you get your cold opens, man. Like that's the secret. I know a lot of people like to do like they'll take they'll do like a teaser thing where they'll take a clip from later on in the show that's like just like the absolute like slam dunk hot take of the night, and then put that in the front, so like, oh, this is the stuff you're gonna hear. I've been cheating where we do this right now. This is how the sausage is made, everyone. Where we do this, we just banter, and then
Yeah, we were just talking and you pressed "I'm going live," and then you you finished your sentence.
yep, yep. This is my super secret technique. I'm even editing where the chat bracket shows up, like mid stream. Like, all my stuff is different now that I changed everything. Um, all right, so you look at that. Like Kicker's there. Hey, GM Kenny's there. Chat gang showing up, editing chat live. That's right, we do it live around here. The fuck it, we'll do it live technique of podcasting.
Doing it live. So doing it live was one of my so I did club gymnastics in college, and that was one of our team's kind of mantras, because it was basically a group of people who were in the midst of a drinking problem who also did gymnastics. uh, and so like a lot of times you would show up to meets on Saturday mornings, because Friday nights, the ones who were 21 plus were out to the bars, and the ones who weren't were just getting drunk in the hotel room. Uh, and so you'd have guys who just like roll into the meet, just dead. You're like, "Aren't you gonna warm up?" And they're like, "No, man, we're just gonna do it live. Like whatever may come from this." And for those of you that don't know, that's a sport where you like want to be warmed up. You want your muscles to be like ready to do the thing. Like up here, your brain knows how to do all of it. Like that's not the thing you have to be worried about. It's making sure that your body is ready for that. So whenever I hear, "Look it, we're doing it live," I picture my teammate Dan, who I had seen basically die the night before. Uh, you know, pull off his warm ups and go out to the floor and be like, "Maybe today's the day that we call the ambulance."
Man, that's the cold open you want, everybody. That's what you aspire for. I am, of course, the magical Mr. Mephisto, the most dangerous man in Age of Sigmar. Sajil popping off immediately with that 12-year tier 1 sub streak.
12
Thank you
years.
so much. I'm joined by show favorite, kind of my unofficial co-host. I think you've been on enough episodes. The
Yeah,
Lord.
me, Haywo. Yeah, it's been a Bryce. It's been a few.
Yeah. So you might have the all-time record now because you were creeping up on Bryce before, and I think he hasn't been on for a couple shows now. So of course, many of you know him as Brendan Melnick. Some of you may fear him as the Lord of Death. And I'd like to add Lord of Darkness to the moniker now too, because you've been painting slaves to darkness.
Only because I saw Dave Kerr's Knights of the Empty Throne list, and I looked at it and I went, "My God, it's beautiful. I must play it." And I had just purchased like a bunch of Slaves to Darkness models, at the end of 2020, because I have an Archeon, and I was like, "Oh, I need some Varangard. We'll paint that up, and it'll be cool." And I saw the list, and I was like, "I have most of that. I should just try it, right?" And I tried it, and after the game, I went and ordered the rest of the models, and I was like, well, this is what we're doing. So
Awesome. Awesome. Have you gotten to like proxy it out and play it a little bit in some of the lab tech? Yeah.
yeah, I got a game against Dan where it was just a lot of bases, and then I got a game in against Dave where it was most of the models that I needed. So, uh, yeah,
I mean, it's a cool
been good.
list. I mean, that's of course. Well, I guess you want to say what Knights of the Empty Throne is in case someone's not familiar with that, real quick.
So, Knights of the Empty Throne is a Slaves to Darkness sub-faction choice, where there's not really any sub-factions in Slaves to Darkness because you have to choose one of the different paths. And what this one is if you don't take Archeon, you can have your units of Varangard be heroes. So this list revolves around a really cool idea of a unit of 6 Varangard where you basically spend another, which in and of itself is 560 points, and then you spend another 500 and some odd points in buff pieces, where all you do is just pour, reroll saves, reroll hits to wound, reroll. You add +1 to save from the War Shrine. Your command trait, your opponent can't retreat from you, and then you have your artifact, which lets you pile in from 6 inches. And you have a Chaos Lord who lets you pile in and fight twice for a command ability after you've done your pile in and fight twice for free ability. And it's just nuts. I have pulled off a full 25% of Dan's army in one combat phase one time with that 6 Varangard. It's like, okay, we can get behind this. This will work.
Right.
This will do.
Right. And of course you get to have maximum swagger because you have like $200 in 6 models, just like you're just laying your wallet out on the table as you deploy.
Well, I mean that's Sons of Bahamut now. You know, anybody who's running that, like minimum purchase on that is like $800.
I made my peace with it. I knew the price hike was coming when I saw Sons of Bahamut's price tag. I'm like, it's gonna be a price hike. I finally made my peace, and I just had like cold sweats and a flashback to like how much I hate the price. Oh yeah, that's gonna be brutal. But yeah, I mean,
I ain't looking forward to it, buddy.
Oh man, I'm gonna buy the whole range because I am.
I hope I've got enough on the shelf where there's only going to be some things I have to pick up. You know, like you get a new kit of skeletons. I'm not going to replace all 120 skeletons or whatever it is.
Right.
Like, it's like, you know, we'll get a box. There'll be unit champions. You'll mix them in.
Right.
But
yeah, right on. Well, tonight's topic is actually a fun one. We're going to be talking about essentially teaching battle plans, and it's not too dissimilar from something you were kind of mentioning there at the cold open, which is with the sort of gymnastics that sort of, and we lost him, so I'll just keep talking. It's not too dissimilar from something we were talking about at the cold open, where you're essentially talking about like sort of like everything up in your head in terms of gymnastics, and it's just kind of getting the body to put it all together. Age of Sigmar is a lot like, especially if you're going to go do a tournament, you know, like there's a little bit of that in Age of Sigmar. So we're gonna be exploring a little bit of that, and I want to catch up here on chat gang because y'all have just been popping off. First thing I saw was Gypsy Danger apologizing for a tangent. Disgusting. Never apologize for tangents on RantCast. But has anyone had issues with Tabletop Simulator, specifically when highlighting a bunch of models? That's not a me question. Someone there in chat gang hopefully was able to answer that for you. I don't do the Tabletop Simulator thing. So.
Same.
Sounds like a job for Rocco. See if Rocco's around to come in and maybe direct you at him. If you do a at Rocco yo boy with the underscores in between, just add him on Twitter. He'll instantly have the answer for you. So, afternoon. Good evening. Good morning, everybody. Sounds like TTS is ignoring the basis when grouping the models. You could try attaching the models to alternative Blank bases with the link. Yeah, see, I don't even know what this is. It's just gibberish to me. Is this what I sound like when I talk about Age of Sigmar to strangers?
Probably. It's what I sound like when I talk about darn near anything to anybody, and they go, uh-huh. I recognize all of those things as words. Thank you.
Yeah. New camera. New angle. Not a new camera. I've got a new desk set up. D6. So a little bit a different angle, different setup, a lot more space now. I am surrounded by all the things I love. A little hobby desk to the side of me. Staging area here. Just nice new setup. I've never owned a new desk in my life. It's always been like a garage sale desk or like the one you see on the side of the road, and you're just like, oh yeah, that'll work. That's better than the one I currently have.
It's the right size.
Yeah, it's been my desk story my whole life. There's the time I had my computer, multi-$1,000 computer rig, just the amount of money I sunk into my computer rig, sitting on a kitchen table. The kitchen table was my desk for like 3 solid years. Just 2 monitors, kitchen table. This is priorities, right? But I am an adult now. It's time that I own a new desk, right? Yeah, I mean that's the thing. You're not wrong, Chris. Who buys desks? People just leave them on the side of the road. 100%. The idea of purchasing a desk was weird to me, but Molly talked me into it. Soren popping off with 5 gift subs, bringing his total gift subs to 305. He is of course, the Mad Lad. Enjoy all those wonderful emotes designed by the Doc King. Everybody, especially be sure to spam Nagash in channels where people hate death. So, real talk, Mr. Mephisto, send me the link for that desk. I really want it. All right, man, I'll get it to you after the show. 160.
Do you think that there are other podcasts that have like such a this is clear, this is a Death Homer chat, like this is a Death Homer podcast? Are there other shows that are like chaos or like destruction or order? I know like Doom was definitely like
ogres.
I would classify as more of a destruction show for a while, but like are there other shows that just Homer for Grand Alliances the way that yours does?
I'd say not the way I do. I think a lot of podcasters are known for like the armies they like or like gravitate towards, but I think most show hosts try to like pretend that they're unbiased, Still, they're like, oh yeah, I love Slaanesh, but I like all the armies. And what I do is I try to like just like fully on be as big of a shameless homer as I possibly can be, but then like let people know it's okay to be a shameless homer for their thing along the way. And I think that's kind of like, I think that's where my like particular brand of humor falls in. The closest one is probably Doom and Darkness though, with Maw Tribes or the Mighty Guts, yeah. Right? Like,
because I think the exception comes in where your RantCast as a thing came together because of one battle tome specifically,
right?
Which is like when you think about like the scope of all of the reasons to start like spending your time on something like this, one battle tome coming out is a really weird trigger point.
Well, and then you I've 87 episodes in. We're approaching 2 years now of me doing this, right?
Oh God, yeah.
Well, like, so we're approaching 2 years of me doing this. I think, August will be 2 years, so about a year and a half. Like, and to have had that jump off point with, like, shameless homering for death and then, like, keep it going, I feel like I'm getting away with something I shouldn't be. like, I'm even, so right now, tonight's beverage is Necro Mango Con. So it's like, instead of Necronomicon, it's a mead. It's a mango mead with a black pepper added. So really tasty. But like, I've always been a death homer, so on and so forth. I know I've gotten worse. Like, the show is just emboldening me. Like, I'm buying skulls for everything now. I'm like, it's become it's become so much my identity now that like I'm gonna have a tattoo of Nagash on my body, for crying out loud. Like, it's these things that it's just escalating. Someone needs to stop me at some point.
Always be on brand.
Yeah, that's right. Rant me, daddy. How's it going, Tomb King? Tristan. um, yeah, Coach was Gits initially, and then Cities came out, and he's been more Cities lately.
Yeah, but that's one battle tome. Like yours is a whole faction. I get that like you're a little light on Night Haunt and Flesh Eater Courts, but like your show goes from just kind of like wide range of topics, and then October hits, and you're just like
Death time.
talking about the death factions.
Yeah.
Non-negotiable, everybody.
Nope.
Like this is just what it's gonna be until the sun burns out.
Yep. Death is best. Well, I mean, I gotta update people because like I just did a whole month of death.
Things change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like where like it's October is like the where are they now of like the death faction. So like every time we got to keep updating that. But I don't know. I think there's. I mean I really do like the Death Grand Alliance, and it's you say I'm like light on Ghosts, and I'm already like I gotta buy them all over again. I'm like, because I moved a bunch of mine because I let the internet negativity get to me with Legions of Nagash and like Grimghast Reapers and stuff like that, and like I let it get to me, and I'm like, never again. Like I just like completely overcorrective steer. I will never let someone ruin my fun in Age of Sigmar ever again. And go ahead.
You're in charge of that influencing now, so like you'll just bring on a person who's like super jazzed about Night Haunt. And you're like, done.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, I mean, that might be my superpower though. Is I can, like, it's the hype game. It's really about the hype, and like I don't like necessarily what somebody else likes, but if I see that they hype up the way I hype up, I like I'm on a resonant frequency. So like someone who was like Sons of Behemoth's not my thing, or like Tzeentch isn't my thing. Tzeentch is a really good example because Tzeentch is actually the opposite of my thing. It's probably my least favorite army. But I spent a little bit talking to like Alex Mylonas, and like suddenly I'm hyped for Tzeentch because I can like I just feel his excitement for his army, and then I'm like I get it, and I don't know, just love your stuff. It is the love that binds us, even though eventually death wins everybody. You'll all be Nagashes eventually, so why fight now? Kicker I started with Feck, just got even more into death. Rant me daddy just rolls off the tongue. That is that's better than entertain me monkey or dance for me monkey. Yeah, rant at me daddy or rant for me daddy. It's a little creepy, but you know what? I'll allow it. I've got Sigvald sitting behind me actually right now, right there. So we'll allow it. Sorry, catching up on chat. Not trying to dead air anybody here. My nut haunt will be powerful and interesting one day. I'm telling you, that new model, it's coming with an apology letter and a bunch of buffs to Night Haunt. The one that was teased.
It's very optimistic. I think as I saw that model, I texted Dave and I was like, "Man, it looks really cool. I can't wait to see how overpointed and mediocre its rules are." And I believe the text message I got was a tradition unlike any other.
Well, I just saw the Guardian of Souls with a shade glass or mortality glass.
Oh yeah.
Someone was like painting it, and I just like it just came up in my feed. They're like, "I'm painting this model. I love this model so much," and I'm just like,
so good.
I'm just like, I'm sorry.
I mean, I'll let anybody run it as a Guardian of Souls, like
right.
Like that's what it is.
Right.
It just has a nightmare lantern, quote unquote.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, man. That time glass though was nuts.
It was really good. That's why the new one, the Excruciator or whatever, is coming with an apology letter. Like, we're sorry about your mortality glass. This model is awesome and fixes everything.
So bonkers. that model single-handedly made lists work.
I'm
So dumb.
we're already on this. We're already talking death here, and I haven't really gotten to just gush about Warhammer for a little bit. So I promise, dear chat gang, we will get to the topic.
We're gonna
tonight.
get to the show, I swear.
We will. But
I have a bedtime. Like there are rules here.
But the reveals for Curse City and Soulblight, I got to get your takes on it. I just got to hear.
Oh my god. So like the Soulblight stuff is great, super awesome, very cool. I love it. You know the Underworld's Warband was magnificent, right? It takes all the visual cues from all the old vampire lords that you loved in the old world, and there's a new twist on them in the Age of Sigmar universe. Cool, awesome, super easy line in the sand to take. I would love to meet the person who's just like, nah, I guess they're okay. Then you have the potato camera, Soulblight person that we saw, right?
Milady,
with the flowy hair,
who has her own emote in our stream, by the way. Thanks, Doc.
That one to me, I think, is the most interesting to see how that one ties in with what we learned about the newest preview, which is the named character Ratman, and like how that interacts with bloodlines and all that jazz.
That's the newest one we saw. The Rat Prince is my favorite model, no joke, since Catacross. Like it's like kind of everything I want in vampires, which is I like vampires who are remember their horror. I think this is very like, don't get me wrong, like Alucard's probably my favorite. Alucard from Castlevania is probably like my favorite vampire overall in terms of just you look at like the totality of like pop culture that has vampires in it. It's like both the Alucards from Helsing and in Castlevania, and then I have to think hard about other Vlad's up there, one of my favorites of all time. Like it's and then I have to like start thinking once we go deeper. But that model being like vampires are unnatural predators. Like you see this dude who's just maximum pimp strutting through the alley and you're like, okay, and then you do that double take and you're like, and then the longer you stare at him, the more uncanny and just threatened you feel. Like that model does that in such a great way. Like you're like, look at this regal pose. He's got the double canes. You're like, oh, one's a sword and one's a cane. And like just as you're looking at it, the more you realize like I'm fucked.
There's so much more to see on that model.
Yeah.
Than your first pass. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really
he's very cool. And so the Soulblight stuff is great. Like I'm really looking forward to see everything they do with it. Right, the White King on horse. Awesome, fantastic. You didn't do anything complicated with it. You took a classic model and you made it Age of Sigmar-y. But you didn't have to take it too far to make it look modern, to make it look like it fit in that universe, to make it look like it fit with the other models. Cool, awesome, great. But Curse City is where like I wrench free of all of my restraints, and I look at that and I just go, normally, I am not this board game kind of guy. However, there is no way they made a game with models that are that cool that is bad. In my mind, it's impossible. Like there are universes where I look at it and I go, okay, cool, like those are relevant models for me to have. Neat, awesome, fantastic. We'll get them, we'll paint them up, we'll toss them in the army. Hey, does anybody want the board pieces? And just
right.
Just give them to somebody. There is no way, none. It is impossible for them to make a game that has models that look like that is garbage. It's just scientifically impossible.
I agree.
I am bewildered at the quality of, mostly like their big bads kind of thing. The skeletons are cool. The little packs of like young feral vampires is cool. I'm not a fan of the zombies too much.
Little
There's
cartoony.
something about
little cartoony.
Yeah, like some of them are like stone headstones that are like spiked to these people. Like it's a weird line for me to draw in terms of like what I can believe in a universe with like magic and dinosaurs and dragons and all sorts of crazy stuff. But there's just something I look at about like a headstone being staked to a person, and then you're able to put enough unlife into them where they are capable of overcoming. Yeah, headstones are really heavy. Like where they just like walk around with it on their back, like it should have fallen off. Like, you know, the like roll around, or like they should have taken them off the spike. I don't know. It's just I'm glad that they went bold with it.
Yes.
I'd much rather they like went far and missed than you just like, God dang it. Like these are just regular zombies with just smaller hands.
Right.
You know, not that I don't have, you know, a ton of them just sitting around.
I think that's a square base too, isn't it?
It is, but that's just what I was painting them on, because I was gonna do for my Bone Reapers a unit of Marauders that were mercenaries, but I didn't want to do a unit of Marauders, so I took some zombies and like gave them shields and stuff like that, and I was like, that is a Bone Reaper good enough mercenary unit.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously never came to pass, but
yeah,
so I'll just paint them up as zombies at some point. But yeah, man, I am all about that Cursed City kit. I am 100% buying it. I am already talking to people about like getting the league stuff and play through the missions and stuff like that.
That's cool. That's cool.
And somebody hit me up the other night with, gosh, I hope we have enough like monsters. He's like, when we were playing, you know, whatever, it was like we didn't have enough, and I was like, we're playing at my house. There are enough. Like if we run out of necromantic monsters to throw, like at the team, there's something wrong with the game.
The vault provides, says Frank on the rocks.
if we get through 400 skeletons and zombies, like, man, we got to give them more hit points. Like,
amazing. Tomb King Tristan and G-Dead dropping 1,000 RDP each. Remind everyone the chat gang ain't nothing to mess with. Yeah, the talking to the zombies real quick. I think, like you said, they swung bold. You know, I'd rather they go weird than not weird enough. So like, cool. They're a little cartoony. I think they're over designed. It might be like a criticism I would hear about them. Like maybe if there was one of the tombstone ones and then like some shamblers and, you know, is broken up a little bit more, that would be cool. But that flesh, what is he? The grave, the grave lord or something.
Oh, the gravekeeper.
The gravekeeper. Cool. That thing's gnarly and awesome as hell. I want that to be the new Deadwalker's inspiration. You know how they took with Nighthaunt, which I think when Vince Venturella did his like aesthetics survey, Nighthaunt I think was like the #1 for aesthetics, and if not #1, it was like very
Nighthaunt
cool.
are great. They're beautiful.
They did that by like taking basically one model and just going, what all can
3
we?
Kits.
Yeah.
3 kits.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like, what all can we do with this? And like, oh yeah, the most dynamic range we've ever made. If they do that with Deadwalkers and like their inspiration is this like this flesh crafted like Tomb Lord guy, like
we're in good shape, right? Like
David Spader,
awesome.
Yeah,
fantastic. Here we go.
Yeah, Shovel Knight for the win. Yeah, the Shovel Man, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, I'm glad to hear your thoughts on that. I hadn't really gotten to pick your brain. I think you had the first tweet about like Cursed City, or like the question isn't. Like, if I'm getting it, it's how many.
Right.
So, brilliant. Yeah, so...
A very popular, like, one-sentence tweet. Just...
Yeah. Did the same thing for Ossiarch Bone Reapers. They're really good at, when they explore that, like, AOSifying of, like, an old trope or an older thing, they're really good at it. Their modeling team, their sculpting team. It's why, like, with the Soulblight thing, we saw, like, the bat-haired lady, the potato thing, and, like, the high gothic, even, like, the way she's posed on her base, she's kind of, like, looming and leaning forward, and somebody criticized that they're like, that posture is, like, off, and I'm like, Yeah, it's like when the Goblin King is walking through, in the labyrinth, is like walking through his little like MC Escher chambers, and you're just like getting him at all these weird angles because he's haunting you. Like, of course, a vampire is just kind of gonna be. It's like in Lestat when Armand is like walking on the freaking ceiling and stuff. Like it's just yeah, vampires should do that. They should be weird and uncanny. But like you're looking at. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just agreeing. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're getting that like you've got that high gothic, and you mentioned like bloodlines. I think we're getting bloodlines. Like because we do have such a we have such a range of them now, even just with what we've seen so far. Even within the sort of Shadespire box, where you have a little bit more of your quote unquote vampirate with the lady, then you have like high gothic, and then you have like a traditional almost Vlad or von Karstein looking character. Like you're getting a range there. You have the Rat Man. You've got this high gothic one that we saw and still haven't heard more about Games Workshop. I'm waiting. And even like the Vargulf type thing that's in the Cursed City, which to me is remembering Flesh Eater Courts as a bloodline.
The Strigoi.
Yeah, as the Strigoi, right? Like what that could look like if you go more that route. Like you talk about those like the sort of fledgling vampire, the like very feral ones. Like those could fit in that Strigoi range too. Flesh Eater Courts might get wrapped into this book as a bloodline, and
it could. I kind of hope not. They're the only one of my Death Army that's based different, and I'd be really annoyed if I had to go back and change the basing on all those guys to the 130 ghouls I have to match the rest of my Death Armies.
I want Flesh Eater Courts to get new models in some way, because when I saw that the new Vargulf or the Proto Vargulf, which also had a pretty solid paint job too, and I know Games Workshop sometimes gets criticized for their painting, but like you could see the gradient in the flesh and like how the knuckles were cracked and worn and stuff like that. I'm like, this is what Flesh Eater Courts looks like in my mind's eye. Like that's where the sculpture should start. Not these like, I love that they're kind of blank canvases. You really get back what you put into ghouls. Like I really do like that. I think that makes them a very good like new player friendly army, because contrast paints, a couple detail, you can really have something that looks pretty decent. But then if you're really into it, you can get these really kind of breathtaking, awesome, like adding some conversions and some bits and bobs from across it. Go ahead.
Nighthaunt get the same kind of effect where they can go together real quick, but the same thing, the folks that put loads of love and effort into their Nighthaunt create some of the most gorgeous models that you've ever seen.
I'll have to rebase half my FAQ. All my ghouls are on wood planks, which would just not be, which would just now be ship planks. I'd be okay with it. Yeah. And hey, Tulilia, how's it going? So yeah, I'm just excited. The one thing I am confident in with Games Workshop that I always believe them when they say they're a models company first. I do give them that benefit of the doubt. Like sometimes rules don't land or they do some stuff and people are like, why are they doing this? The one thing I always hold, as long as they keep like just hitting home runs on their models and showing me that they really are that models first company, I'll keep the faith. And I'm waiting for that. I know that they're gonna crush the vampires, and if they don't, I'm just gonna keep playing Bone Daddies anyway and be happy either way, because the models will be made for somebody else. But they had me at Potato Cam pick, and I'm already hyped into the stratosphere. It's over.
Game over, man. Game over.
Game over. Tithe me harder, Bone Daddies. That's right. So yeah, I had a good segue there. I had a good segue opportunity talking about gymnastics from the cold open.
How to teach people to play Age of Sigmar.
Yeah. Had a great opportunity. Could have went with another one where you're talking about Cursed City and like how the Cursed City box. Well, is that going to be good for teaching? No, that might not be good for teaching. But so many opportunities for a segue. No, deeper down the rabbit hole about how awesome Cursed City and how awesome vampires are. How great
And we're
death
just
is.
driving right by all the exits.
So yeah, teaching sort of new players and getting them into Age of Sigmar. Now, this is like I think this is the big question, right? Age of Sigmar is one, just more fun when your friends are playing with it. How do you grab that friend, get them into Age of Sigmar? Like they're showing the interest, they're doing all that stuff, or you're just like super persuasive and you've already just like, you know, uh, convinced them to come play. Yeah.
Man, my buddy Nick convinced two of his buddies to just up and buy 2,000 point armies without ever playing a game. They built them all up, and then they started playing games and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, you got your friends to spend like just a casual $600-$700 just on an idea, because like he's a really good painter, right? And like he obviously has his friends over and he shows them, he talks about them, and like we go to tournaments and stuff like that. But like I can't imagine just like having one of my non-Warhammer friends over and being like, yeah, man, you want to like see my cases? Like, you want to play this with me? Like, yeah. And you're just like, well, like you could have your own army and just like, because he has multiple armies. Like they could have like played a practice game. He could have like showed you how the game worked and all that. Nah, just think corn's cool, man. Here's a bunch of stuff. Like, here's a corn army. Like, go nuts. And that's just what they did. And you know what, man? Good for him.
See, that's terrifying to me because, one of the things like I really kind of set out to do early on with the show is give people like a few ways to approach the game from, because like, Halo playing like freaking Beastclaw Raiders for as long as he did, when they were utter jobbers and stuff, and like 3-2 was the highest record in the world for a calendar year with them from Australia.
Yeah.
You had one of the 3-2 records. He had one of the 3-2 records.
I had a couple of 3-2s.
Yeah, and I'm just like looking at that army, and I'm just like, I can't job for that. I always need to feel like 3-2 is kind of, if I requisitely practice with my army and aware of the tournament's meta, I feel like 3-2 is like the floor for me. And from there, I want an opportunity to get lucky, play out of my mind, go 4-1.
Once or twice, yeah.
Yeah. Like that's how I, like that's like where I want to get on the ride. That's not, no. It's so like the idea of being competitively out of it for so long and just jumping into an army without knowing anything about how this might competitively perform. And when you're starting out, you're not going to be someone who's like, oh, I'm pretty much 3-2 showing up to the tournament because I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. You don't start out there. It takes you a while to get up to that. You need to grind games. You need to practice with battle plans. And to just like, oh, buy corn. And just like, I'm going to buy all the models that I think look great. Cool for hobby. But like, for me, I'm like, I gotta know there's some juice there. Like I gotta know that there's some like gas in the tank, or like I'm gonna spend a lot more time at my vacation homes, right? Like one of my vacation homes is Beast of Chaos. Never mind.
You, me, and just about everybody who looks so longingly at that book. If Beast of Chaos becomes good, there's going to be a tournament. Like you kind of missed out on this because you got into AOS. Like right around 2.0.
Right before it was I was on GHB 2017, so that was the year before 2.0 came out. So I'm not quite a 2.0
right.
baby. I was getting in my reps before that.
So like real early Age of Sigmar tournaments, half the field was Stormcast, 50% was Stormcast. It's gonna be that resurgent, but it's just gonna be Beast of Chaos players, and just everyone's gonna be like, yeah, man, like I've always owned Beast of Chaos, and it's not gonna be like one of those like weird, like where you make the joke of I've always loved the models kind of thing. It's just like, yeah, I've owned these for like 15 years, and you're gonna look at them and you go, yeah, it looks like you did.
Yeah.
Like, that's clearly just a square base that you cut the edges off of.
Yeah, or they've got the little square to circle conversion things, like they're just sitting in them, or you go to move one of their bestigors and it's just a metal slab.
It just tips over. Like that's what the competitive scene is going to become. Is it's just going to be everyone going, well, they're good enough. I'll take a shot at it.
Right.
And Everyone's just gonna show up with the same like 400 wound army and go, well, all right.
Oh man, no, it's true. I think I don't know what it is. I think that there's just this teeming, just gigantic love for Beasts of Chaos, and then like there's a little bit of a Fermi paradox where it's like I'm pretty convinced like people love this army and play it, but like where is all the support? Like it's if everyone
In the shadows, everyone's in the forest. We're all waiting.
Oh man, no, that'll be a great day. Yeah, but no, the just kind of resetting it real quick. The like I try to like get people like okay when you're getting into Age of Sigmar, you need to be honest with yourself with what you wish to accomplish. Like if you truly don't care, if you got that Halo thing where you're like you really don't care how good your army is or not, and you can 3 and 2 is your ceiling because it's just cool, but you got to know that. You got to know that going in though, and the whole like every army can compete like to a point. Yeah, if you play Sylvaneth, like I'm pretty sure like in some certain like casual scenes or even like certain tournament settings, like you'd be able to like have a pretty decent weekend, a 3 and 2 weekend. Maybe get like really lucky on the battle plans. Go 4-1, be in the mix for best order or something like that. That's a scenario I believe is capable for many armies. If you're just willy-nilly grabbing models off the shelf and just throwing $700, like that's probably not the category you're in though. And so I really try to like figure out what you're trying to do. Give yourself a pet unit, but for the most part, tune it. And that's just my mentality. Everyone's got their own thing. So like your friends just buying armies, I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah, he's got better friends than I do. That's for sure.
Well, I don't know, but to kind of I guess to use that as a teaching moment, do you think going into Age of Sigmar, and obviously it's going to be different for every person to person, do you think ideally you would play some games, get some practice battle plans in with like a friend's army first? Like, what do you think the ideal getting into Age of Sigmar scenario looks like for somebody? Again, different for everybody, but what's your take? Yeah.
Yeah, outside of like just walking into a Games Workshop and being like, or your local gaming store and just being like, whoa, what is this all about? And then you get the sales pitch spun on you. Just imagining that it's just you and your buddy, and they come into your house, Meph, and they see all these cool models that you have in your case, and they're like, what's this about? And you give them your card, and you're like, I have 80 whatever episodes of multi-hour podcasting that I do about this. Just listen to this, and you'll like, we're good.
No, I don't. Like people ask, they're like, "Oh, what a great podcast for getting into Age of Sigmar." I'm like, not my show. Like 2 hours of just slogging through philosophy and stuff. Like, probably not the best. But if you want people passionate about AOS, sure, my show. There you go.
Yeah. So like when you described to them the setting and like kind of how the game works, and if they express interest in being like, oh, I'd like to know more about that, that's where I would recommend the idea of playing a game. And I don't mean like a 2,000 point game for someone who is totally new to war games. You're talking like 500 to 1,000 points. You play it on a 4x4. You take these missions, you scale them down to that size, and before you roll any dice, you give them the benefit of being like, what do you think is like really cool? Of the things that like I've explained, like is the magic something that's cool to you? Do you want units that are just going to go in there and just, punch somebody's helmet off and just steamroll through the units? Do you like the big, stupid, crazy monsters? And when they tell you what they like, you write like a list for them. Doesn't have to be legal, by the way. You write a list for them that is gonna be cool, that that is going to show off the things that are interesting to them, and you take something that is going to show off the fundamentals of the game, right? So you take something that's super balanced, but is not a hard counter to everything that's going on. You want something that does something in every phase, ideally. Stormcaster a great pick for that because they have units that do literally everything. But
I
if you
learned on
want to say,
Stormcast. I learned on Stormcast. I played Halo's Stormcast against his Beastclaw Raiders and against his mixed order.
right,
So
so that's where I would say you flip it. Like let the person that you're teaching play the stuff that just seems really cool to them. If they came in and they were like, "Yo, those monsters just looked so awesome. Like, is there an army of monsters I can play?" And you're like, "Yeah, dude, for sure." And and thankfully we're at a point in the game where yes, there is, and you let them do that. And you know what? If they want, like, if you run it out where they're running a 3 model Beastclaw Raider, 1,000-point monster truck list, okay, cool. You're gonna bring a hero that can cast. You're gonna bring some fighty units. You're gonna bring some shooty units. You're gonna just bring units that do stuff, and you're gonna play the game. And he's gonna play with the thing that that they think looks cool, and you're gonna play like with the rules because they're gonna pick up on what it is that you're doing. And you tell them like, I brought something that's kind of even keeled just to show off like what stuff does, how the game works. And if they like it from there, cool. You can play bigger games. You can play more poignant ruled games.
wait, you don't take them immediately to Pound Town and tell them to get good,
No.
kid?
No, I did that to our GW store manager who needed an AOS refresher game. But I had over the last like month seen him just decimating people in 40K teaching games, and like I knew that, and we're gonna turn the tables on him for all the horrible things he's done to new players. Like,
Amazing. That's that little like you could dole out a little karmic retribution is pretty great.
Yeah, if they are genuinely your friend and they want to come play with you, you do gotta like take your foot off the gas, and that's one of the things that we're gonna talk about in these missions as well. Part of the reasons I love all these missions is it lets you play the game. It lets you take your foot off the gas without looking like that you are just throwing the game away for to let your friend be hanging on in there. If after that like intro game, right, they seem to like it, I think that's where we start this conversation of how do you start teaching somebody how to come into Age of Sigmar.
Well, I think that there is something to be said for like how competitive are you? And I think, like you said, we're going to go into this a little bit, but it is worth noting, like, if you coddle me in a game, like, Halo knows me well enough to where, like, I helped get him into Magic the Gathering back in college, and, he went on to be, like, the higher end, like, tournament grinder than even me. Like, I got him into Magic the Gathering. Like, I had a rapport with him over, like, 14 years of different competitive stuff. Like, to where like he knows that like if you do the kid's glove thing with me teaching me a game, like I'm not gonna like be as engaged or process as hard. Like I need to feel like there's a challenge there so that I have a puzzle to solve and different people are gonna differ. So it is something that I think you need to be cognizant of when you're teaching somebody. Like what level of competition are they is best for them getting into the game, right? Like it's really about them. If you want to like style on somebody, I don't know how much street cred you're getting styling on noobs, but
that was my introduction to War Machine, right? Like I've told this story on the show before, but to keep it short, I went to a gaming club in college. They played War Machine. They really didn't play 40K or Fantasy or anything like that. I said, okay, can you show me how to play? And I grabbed a group that looked cool, and he played me with another one, and we got to turn 2, and I had made some mistake, and he just snipes out my Warcaster, which is central to the War Machine game, and if your Warcaster dies, you lose. And so he snipes out the Warcaster turn 2, and he goes, all right, and that's the game. And I'm like, great. I don't know anything more about this game than I did when I came here, so thanks for that. Really appreciate it.
right.
Well, you want to play another one? Nah, I'm good. And just So like there's a line there where you're putting someone's foot in the dirt because they didn't know that that's how the game worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're not gonna just be like, oh, I'm gonna I'm just gonna run this unit over here because I think they look cool in this corner. Like that's not what we're talking about.
Right. Well, I mean, even with your scenario for War Machine, I think a better thing to do in a teaching game for someone is be like when that player does the thing, you want them to make the mistake, maybe even snipe it out and be like, okay, look, you just lost here. What if we reset this a little bit so that like, because you need to learn that lesson, right? Like you need to learn that you put the thing in the spot it's going to die, and then the game is over. You need to learn that lesson. And some people learn kinesthetically, some people learn on paper and conceptually. Like we all have our different styles. And I think that teaching that hard lesson, but then kind of resetting like the game state a little bit, walking it back to where you can play a game and still learn more would have been a better way to go about that. I think, but
A different age.
yeah. I've never played War Machine. It was this thing that they advertised at a few of the Gen Cons I went to, but like I played Warhammer Fantasy Battle growing up, was never very good at it. I was pretty decent at 40K. Took a long break off. I'm the same story most people tell you about Age of Sigmar. I played 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 Old Hammer, took a break, came back. Age of Sigmar was the thing. Said, okay, I'll play this. Like, so,
Sure.
Warma Hordes breeds unnecessarily aggressive players with their not in my game almost serious spiel. I don't get it. I don't understand. Game, I don't know. It's weird. Like I do have that competitive streak, but I there's no there's no sweetness to the victory in crushing someone who's new for me. Like I don't prove anything. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. I crushed someone who's new. It's like beating my kid in a game of basketball. Like, obviously I don't
He's 3
phone.
feet tall. Like congratulations.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I don't know. It doesn't have any joy for me. Now, of course, I don't do the thing where I let my kid beat me in basketball. I don't want him having the unrealistic expectation that he can win at everything and that he's kid. You got to earn it. You're not better than your dad. But I make it close. you know, uh, I guess when you're talking, but that's talking about like with kids. People. I think the demographic we're talking to right now are adults or young adults and stuff like that. Like, these are people who have conceivably have a familiarity with some nerd stuff. It's about
Sure.
building that bridge into the best damn community in gaming, Age of Sigmar, and showing them why we're the best damn community in gaming, right? So.
Yeah, so after you've had that kind of intro experience, that's where I would recommend, kind of playing fuller games, 1500 to 2000 point games, specifically with these 3 missions that we're going to talk about here.
Okay.
So, what's the first one we had?
The first one we got is Border Wars. So this is a great battle plan for like actually learning a new, even if you're like an existing player and you're a pretty polished player. I think Border Wars is a great one for learning an army or refining how you play with an army. So what about this do you like about sort of teaching someone who's new?
Right. So to your point, this is a great one for anybody starting something, getting a refresher on it, for a couple reasons. Right. The mission is very simple, and for you competitive players, there's almost always some version of it in a tournament pack. Almost always. This is a good mission to have just committed to memory. So the way that this mission works scoring wise for those of you that aren't super familiar, it's 4 objectives. 1 in your territory, worth 1 point to you. 2 on the center line, worth 2 points each. And 1 in your opponent's territory, worth 4 points to you. So they're spaced out over a pretty reasonable area. But there's a nice symmetry to the scoring, where you can play hard to one side or the other, but if the game's like really starting to to kind of go in a weird direction, you can take a unit of yours and just say, oh, I'm going for the home run, going for the big points.
Mm-hmm.
even though that might not be a totally great idea, it gives your opponent something to kind of react to, something to go, well, I don't want him getting 4 points. Or he'll see through your cunning ruse and just be like, okay, well, the unit I left on the objective is going to be able to handle that unit of 5 dire wolves. I think I'll be okay.
Right.
It's simple enough to explain to anybody. There's not any weird additional scoring criteria. It's just models in range. That's who owns it. You don't get bonuses for having like leaders or heroes. There's no weird scoring to it. Like, you can't, like, it has to be held with battle line. It's just heroes. There's very low randomness. This is the game that I teach everybody with in their first, like, introduction to like, how does this game actually work kind of setting. With that, the added layer that I give folks with it is objective missions are the things that give your points meaning. Otherwise, it's just an arbitrary currency system. Without the objectives, you could just build an army that kills everything better than anything anybody has ever seen, and you're going to win every single one of your games against anybody's 2,000-point armies that they're going to be able to put together, because your army just does all of the removing of models, right? Having the objectives on the table, having to go get them, having to do the scoring requirement, having them be in yours, in the middle, and in your opponent's, forces you to play the game at full length, right?
With this sort of like objectives give context to the points take, do you find that this is where players kind of first get their like initial notion when you're teaching them, like the idea of trading points or trading up or trading down, like this thing that we kind of have, like if I throw 400 points at 100 points, theoretically my 400 points should kill it? And is this that first time you think a player internalizes something like that? Now, that's not always the truth, because force multipliers and so on and so forth, and different points in different armies. But in general, I think that's the read, right?
Yeah, I think folks start to understand that, because in the early setting, you're playing about 1,000-point games, right? Or starter boxes, and you get like, you know what your stuff is worth, and as the person teaching, like, you should convey like what is important to your army, the things that make your army go. And like, yeah, sure, it's a 100-point pack of ghouls, but I'm going to spend these other resources to make them more. Like, I'm going to make them fight it more than 100 pack of ghouls. I'm going to give them 2 more attacks. They're really kind of like 200 points of ghouls. And I've got this extra command point sitting around, so they're going to fight again. So it's really going to fight like 400 points worth of ghouls. And you've got a 400-point monster sitting on that objective. So this is kind of you're like, it's a fair trade in what the effective stuff is, but that's not something that they're going to understand right away. But they're going to see, right, that difference in, they paid 400 points for that monster, and I paid 100 points for this pack of ghouls, but I maybe almost killed it, and you ate my 100 ghouls, but you're gonna that player's gonna sit there and go like, oh, like, getting the things to work together is what really gets this to tip over the ledge. And hopefully, they brought synergistic things, or you help them kind of write a list that makes sense, or you wrote it for them, off of just models that you own, and you're able to put something together that was cool and does cool things for them. And I don't recommend like taking off their big scary thing as early as you can. Save that, let them do cool things with their cool scary like unit or monster, whatever it is that's interesting to them.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing no one any favors by being like, yeah, I know that Ghoul King on Terrorgeist is probably the scariest thing on the battlefield. Let him kill something with it. Let him go, oh, that was awesome. You go, all right, now I have to do something about this.
Well, they bought their ticket. Let them take the ride a little bit. Age of Sigmar is a game after all, and like there's some fun and all that. that you want them to experience. Like, there's a reason we play this game. You want them to get to experience some of those reasons in a teaching game. Even roll this bucket of dice so you get addicted. Right.
Yeah, kinda.
Yeah, the first hit's free. That's right. Yeah. So the sort of like I like that, like the objectives are kind of where like the points gain their context. Um, when you're going into teaching, that how much time do you spend on the turn zero? Because I think that as a community, this is something that we haven't had the language for until recently. We have an understanding that before the game starts, you exchange your lists and you talk about what your list does and the good stuff and blah blah blah. But like the actual like if I had new players to teach now, I would really convey the importance and the significance of turn zero so that they understand going out into the world once they're out of the safety of my bunker and where I'm teaching them to play. Like hey, turn zero's setting up the expectations for the game. Like, how much do you spend on like turn zero when you're teaching games, or do you just kind of like find that you don't want to overwhelm them with jargon and like just play a little bit? Like, what's the balance there for you?
Yeah, I probably do a lot less turn zero conversations than I probably should. But I'm very lucky in the sense of I have a very large community that I trust. That when we're bringing someone new into the hobby, that there's a group of people that like you can, once you get them up to speed on kind of how the game works, that uh, will play games. They'll understand that this person is new, and they'll be helpful and they'll be good about it. And you just teach the behavior by being that, right. You're not going to stand there just stone face killer, uh, like in the teaching game. And like in some contexts they know me as that because they've seen me playing somebody else who's prepping for a tournament, and we're in the hobby shop, and that bit of like stress sweat is coming down the face,
Yeah, yeah.
and you're staring your buddy down, trying to get the last bit of advantage in that, and they're like, do you two hate each other? No, we're just plotting out the way all this works. But
Yeah.
I've always been pretty lucky to have a good group of folks that haven't been problematic in that regards, where you can, once you get them up to speed, you can bring them into that community, and everyone's gonna bring them up to wherever it is that they want to go.
Oh no, Sir Darwining. Or you can be your learning game, where a dude legit cheated in the development just to beat a beginner. Yeah, no, we're trying to. I think it's important that if we want the community to be healthy, just like with sports ball, like a good minor league or a good farming system or a good draft, like that's the longevity of your sport. A sport's
Or
only as strong as that sort of next crop of talent. The NBA, high school's got to be healthy to so that it precipitates up. It's the opposite of trickle down. By the way, it's the grass. It builds upward. You want to have a good strong base. Like healthy youth sports translates to healthy collegiate and minors, and then that in turn makes the product at that top end, that professional level better. With Age of Sigmar, you know, I think the best way as the game grows, I mean, we are at the precipice of the next biggest period of growth in our gaming history. In lockdown, Games Workshop posted record profits. Now, this isn't absurd for everything, but there are many businesses that struggled. This is a hobby game meant to be played physically with other people more so than any CCG or
and it's a total luxury product. Like it is
yeah.
the extremist version like of a luxury product. It serves no purpose other than to be a host unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's it.
Yeah.
They're selling you a painting system. They're selling you models. They're selling you rule books. Like all in, said and done. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's other hobbies that are way more expensive. But
Right.
like, like you can't like go do anything other than this with this hobby.
Right, right. Paint. I mean, you could start painting other models and other minis. Like you could branch out and
Sure.
start painting other miniatures. I like that I over enunciate miniatures now, which is not something I used to do. No, but I think that where I was going with this is I think it's really important that as the game grows, the people who hear or who are in the community lead by example. I mean, the fear of a bunch of new people coming into your game and ruining it is something that is very prevalent amongst nerds. You know, you're looking at a group, a demographic of individuals that were traditionally defined by the shared experience of ostracization, right? Like this shared experience of marginalization where you're like, we're nerds, and part of what makes us nerds is that we're outcasts together, right? That's what, and now it's like, wait a second, we're just letting anybody play now? We're not the outcasts anymore? How do you, this might become 40K, or this might become War Machine, and people have that legitimate fear as you get this influx of new players. I think the best way you fight that is ironically by being super chill and accepting. You don't want to put additional chips on people's shoulders because you don't know what they came into from other. The worst thing that would have happened to me is if I came from Magic the Gathering into this, because I already had fear of going to like that one little Gen Con tournament, and that guys coming out in mass, and me having to deal with the stereotypical Magic the Gathering player, but now in Age of Sigmar, that was just modified by all the forum stuff and Facebook chatter I'd read. I'm like, I'm just going in like, oh, these people are gonna try to angle shoot me. They're gonna like be knuckling down on their models and like eking out extra inches. And if I knock over my model, they're gonna call me a cheater. And if I put my Shadespire box of skeletons in with my regular skeletons, they're gonna like try to hit me for WYSIWYG.
You're freak out.
Yeah, like just this doomsday scenario I had. If I had actually fucking encountered that, I'd have become a gigantic asshole. I'd have been like, oh, this is everything I feared it was, so now I have to, like, to slay the beast, I must become the beast, right? Like, I have to be a bigger monster. There's something to be said for the fact that, like, I see a point in my life with Age of Sigmar where RantCast doesn't happen, where I don't go to, like, Dragonfall as my next event. I go to... was it Nova's around that time or something like that instead? Like, I have a whole different trajectory based on those games and the examples that were laid for me. The first guy I played at a professional event was from the Pants Mafia, Kyle, or not professional, a big tournament out in the wild. Outside of my own LGS, outside of my own little world with Haywo and Andrew Yells and stuff like that. My first game was against Kyle. He's such a nice guy. I thought that was an act. I'm like, no human is legit this nice. Like, nobody in the world is actually this nice of a guy. Yeah, actually, him. That's how, it made me want to be a better gamer. Because I'm like, if other people, it took like a couple rounds for me to realize it wasn't an act, but like, this experience here of like meeting somebody that's now a lifelong friend, like, that's what I want to do. That's how I wish to lead in this community. And again, I think it's very, very important that when you're teaching games, you're setting the pressure of the world's not on you. It's just a freaking game. But you can certainly do a lot of good by sort of helping that next sort of group of individuals acclimate to Age of Sigmar. Show them that it's not the forums and Facebook group of nonsense that you might think is reality. And I don't know. So it's something I think about from time to time. This sort of anti-gatekeeping, if you will, of leading by example. Because new players are going to come regardless of whether you want to or not. Games Workshop spends a lot of money and a lot of time trying to get people to buy their product. The new players are coming. And you can either be insular about it and douchey and standoffish, or you can, like, welcome them here, show them how you play the game, lead by example, and have positive growth. There's my fucking soapbox for the evening. Chris CB dropping 1,000
Well,
RDP.
we've got the rant of the cast handled. All right.
Yeah,
So
there we go. Let's get back to the topic at hand. Chris CB dropping 1,000 RDP to remind everyone that chat gang ain't nothing to fuck with. Being an ambassador to the hobby is the best part of the hobby. I agree. Positivity, bro. Quality rants, by the way. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I think if anyone's watched your podcast or if anyone's listened to your podcast, Cubic Shenanigans.
Watching our podcast, I have a lot of other questions for them.
Your podcast is very much a teaching podcast. You do a lot more of this style of content than I certainly do. One thing your co-host will often say is that you're a great teacher of the game, which is really, I think, appropriate.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that when it comes to sort of teaching about teaching games, I think you're a pretty good authority on this. Sorry. Snipbag dropping 1,000 RDP to remind everyone the chat gang ain't none to mess with. So yeah, turn 0. I talked about that. Are we ready for the next battle plan, or you wanna just sort of
Sure. Yeah, this one's straightforward. There's a lot of stuff I loved about it. It's perfect. It's great. It's one of the battle plans I use when I'm learning new games myself, like new armies myself. You cannot go wrong with Border War.
There we go. All right, so next up, Total Conquest. I was actually kind of interested that you picked this one. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on why Total Conquest.
Yep. So Total Conquest is also 4 objective mission, where instead it's spaced out into the corners. The thing that you want to show off with this game, and this is probably not your first game, this is probably your second or third one. Again, I think Border War is your first one. What you teach with this one is you teach that there are different ways to deploy. The objectives are in different places. Their scoring is more variable than Total Conquest, right? Or not Total Conquest, Border War. Because in this one, every objective is worth 1, unless your opponent previously held it, and then it's worth 2. Or if you have, it's a behemoth, right?
If a player controls an objective while there is a friendly leader unit within 6, they score 1 additional victory point.
So your objective can be worth 1, it can be worth 2, it can be worth 3. But they're all the same. They're all the same all the time. You have different directions that you can choose to go. This one you start learning maybe more of the fundamentals of what makes the game, work, right? Where you have, it's very difficult to convey how important the movement phase is to somebody, right? It's one of those things that you learn over time, and as you sit and are introspective about what occurred in the process of that game, a lot of times you realize at some point that you could have changed the game by something as simple as making a run roll in turn 2 instead of just making a regular movement. It's such a wildly small singular dice roll to think about, but sometimes that's all that makes the difference, right? And when you get into the more competitive games, it's very rarely something like that. But as you're coming up and you're trying to break that 3-2 win wall as it is at events, some of those losses are just real small decisions that if you played more games, you were more disciplined, you would have known to have made those choices. But this mission in particular, and the one thing that all of these missions have in common is deployment is very simple in the scale of things. They are just squares, and in this case, you'll have a little arc that you're going to cut out for having to be so far away from enemy territory.
Mm-hmm.
Do not do angles. Do not do stair steps. Do not do anything weird that's going to require you to draw shapes, like real complicated shapes on the board. Absolutely not. No.
Right on.
Do not do that. Horrible, horrible choice.
I like
Squares.
Nuke Doctor here, Sean from Detroit Warhammer Clubs in the house says, love Total Conquest for teaching that risk management dynamic. I think that's showing. This is maybe where you start to learn like trades in terms of like board position, right? Like if you're learning a little bit, you're codifying that a little bit. I like that the first one you're really kind of like, sort of building the context for points and what that means, and now we're getting to like the movement and how that's important. You like to say a lot in conversations. You'll talk about discipline. I remember one of our first conversations was like spears or swords, right? And for skeletons, and you said basically swords, because like once you get more discipline, swords are about as good. And I just that always stays out in my mind. When you say discipline, what do you mean? What is disciplined Warhammer?
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot of things. It's once you have a grip on how your army works, the management of a game to its ultimate success, and you need to be a disciplined Warhammer player to win 5 games at a tournament in almost any situation.
Hmm.
There are windows in time where the armies are so stupid good, and you happen to be just a good enough player playing the army that's just dumb, and the dumbness of that army paired with you being just generally good is going to win you a tournament. It happens,
Hmm.
but that happens a lot less often than a excellent player playing an army that is excellent but has some inherent weaknesses, missions it doesn't super like to see, opponents that uh, it's not it's not happy about seeing on the other side of the table.
Yeah. OBR seeing
But
Skaven at PACA.
mm, yeah, yeah,
uh,
I almost had that game,
yeah. Yeah.
uh, but should and are two different words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, discipline is understanding where everything is in relationship to each other. I think is maybe the easiest way to distill this down. It's where your units are within range of your heroes. It's where your units are in relationship to objectives. It's where your opponent's models are in relationship to objectives, and where your models are in relationship to them. Where the range of your units are to their respective targets that they're interested in. Disciplined Warhammer is getting every last bit of dice potentiality out of the results, and understanding that there are sacrifices to be made in terms of maybe number of models you get into close combat in order to be able to spend the command points that lets you fight a second time. Yeah, okay, on the first pile in you got 2 fewer models, but you got to pile in a second time and fight, which really means you got another like 27. So it, but all it takes is one base being, you know, for a regular person, 2 millimeters out, and you're holding the ruler above the models, and your opponent looks over the top and goes, "Nah, man, it's not close enough. I can't give it to you." You
Right.
know, there are times where you're playing with folks, and you're like, "It's an inexact science. I think it's fine. It might not be. It might be. We're human, right?"
Right.
But you have that when you're making your pylons, that you are getting as many models in as you reasonably can, making sure that that second rank is touching the first one. That if you are trying to prevent a pylon from another model, that you have pinned them in such a way where they can't come over, knowing your order of activations that you are going to have to take in order to maximize the end result, where you can say, I can take a punch from this unit on this one because at worst I'm going to lose a model and a half, but I should still be able to take out that unit in return. But I know I need to go over here because if I don't do this first, they're going to swing, and it's all going to be lost. Knowing when to actually physically make the charge, when to kind of hold off and say, I didn't get that other unit in, my support pieces aren't right, like I'm kind of leaving this thing out on an island. Uh, Discipline is about risk management, and just seeing all of the game for what it is.
Hmm.
but that is not a skill I can teach you overnight.
Right.
It's realistically not a skill I can teach you, verbally over the course of, 15 to 20 episodes of anything.
Right.
You are going to develop disciplined Warhammer skills by playing a ton of games with opponents that are willing to be honest with you about what went right and what went wrong.
Right.
And then, taking it upon yourself to make adjustments from there.
Well, in general, I like that discipline is sort of like, it's almost like an applied awareness is what you're like. You can be aware of the game, but then also like applying that and seeing the ramifications of that on the table is kind of like what I'm hearing. I like to when you talk about like opponents being honest with you, I think that's critical. I think that's super critical in growth, and I also think honesty with yourself. I talk about I've been around competitive stuff. League of Legends games are the biggest cesspool of dishonesty, which is why, competitively speaking, it stagnates. Because players aren't often honest with the mistakes they make over the course of a game. Lane was feeding. I'm speaking in jargon if you've never played League of Legends, but like immediately people go to the stuff that other people did wrong. In Age of Sigmar, you only have yourself. For the most part, there's pairs and team games, and I love those formats. But at this,
and there's the dice. You can always blame the dice.
You can always blame the dice, but I think it's almost more prescient to look for the place where dice weren't a factor, the battle plan wasn't a factor, and you have to look for that stuff. You got to be honest with yourself, and if you have an opponent who helps you see some of that stuff, even better, because that's the only way you're going to grow is knowing. Yeah, it was a bad matchup on a bad battle plan, and the dice were kind of against me. What decisions did you make, though? Really analyze those. Those decisions start when you build that list. They start when you deploy. Like, you're already making decisions, So the option of going for the run when you maybe wanted to be able to charge instead, like, because you don't live in that super special land some people get to live in with run and charge, so you have to make a decision. Things like that really impact the game. Heck, I've had times where I've made the wrong decision, but my opponent ended up like, oh, he made a mistake. I'm going to go for the risky play to try to crush him. And then, like, it didn't pan out for them because the dice went against him. And, like, I had to be honest that, like, I didn't win that. Because, like, if I make that decision, 100 times, and 90 of them I make it one way, if I make the decision 100 times, how does that usually play out if it doesn't backfire on my opponent? You got to like look at it like that. If I make this decision 1,000 times, like, how does that play out? That's another good way to analyze and get some honesty about it. I mean, once you get into the tournament play, once you get into like the under the gun, you go for that 1 in 100 chance. You go for some of that stuff if it's the only out you have. But to even get to the point where you can identify those opportunities, it starts with that honesty.
Yep. So. And I think that's one of the great strengths of having like a gaming community or a club really comes in handy. We, the guys from Milwaukee, will sometimes play games where 2 guys are playing and then a third is just standing at the edge of the table. Like he's working on other stuff, but he comes over and the 3 of us will have a conversation about what's going on and who's doing what and where and when and why and how. And like we're helping each other, grow in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously if you're just getting that group started, learn together. Be your gaming club. All it takes is 2 people to have a gaming club.
There's a hot take.
That's it. Yeah.
It's true though. Halo and I. That's where the heavy magic is the Halo and Mephisto joke goes all the way back to. I think I've told this story before, but World of Warcraft. If you've ever played World of Warcraft, dear chat gang, people be like, I want to make a new warlock. What should I name it? Or whatever. It was a very, very common thread on the World of Warcraft threads or forums, and there was this one thread where someone was like, hey, I need name suggestions for my undead warlock, and people just went through and they suggested like historical names and like a bunch of like historical names or like, oh, puns and like really really in-depth stuff. And then this one person showed up and just had this great list of like historical names and witty puns, and then just in the middle, heavy magic in all caps. And then the whole rest of the thread for just 100 pages became people suggesting realistic but always putting heavy magic on the list. And it was just the funniest, like, had to be there type of thing. And Haywo and I still snicker about it to this day. It's like every time we go to make a new character and something, just like, what should the name be? Heavy Magic. It's just like the dumbest. So we joked that we were Heavy Magic. My gaming binder, which I believe is right here behind me. Boom. There you go, chat gang. The Heavy Magic logo here still. And my son wrote his alphabet around it too, so like I have an actual logo now, and I could like easily put my sticker on. No, Heavy Magic.
Nah.
Yeah, the club can be 2 people. I need to get a Heavy Magic shirt made. Maybe, but Heavy Magic exists in here. It's in the heart.
Well, maybe it's just that. It's the Heavy Magic logo here. And like it still has like all of the alphabet that your son did.
That's right.
And you make it a joke for like just 10 people,
yeah,
right? Like that's
the 3 people who buy the Heavy Magic shirt. I wish I could even say I was the originator of I was the witty guy who wrote all the names.
You were just there.
I was just happened to be there as I watched this like kind of wholesome like meme just be born, this inception of this like wholesome meme, or because usually it's like vitriol and trolling people, and it doesn't take long before like the lewd
that takes over.
Yeah, but no, it was just Heavy Magic, 100 pages of like honest suggestions in this somewhere in there. I don't know if that person ever made the character name and named it Heavy Magic or not. Heavy Magic tattoo. There you go. That's the next donation incentive for Rantathon tattoos. Is I get Heavy Magic like tattooed on my knuckles. Heavy Magic. Now you all know, dear chat gang, the story of Heavy Magic, and you can go on and spread this joke. Enjoy. This is my gift to you tonight. Brendan's gift to you tonight, however, is to stay on topic and teach you about battle plans.
Teaching you how to teach people using battle plans.
Right. So with Total Conquest here, really learning that sort of risk reward. Different now. The scoring's getting a little. It's not random yet. You have full agency.
Not yet.
You have full agency, but you get to see those you get to see those sort of like decisions really like kind of affect the gameplay. Do I put a leader near this objective to begin with? Yes, no, right? Like I don't want that there, right? Like just some more 3-dimensional thinking. And so the next one then, speaking of not random yet, shifting objectives, which is one of those ones that has a bit of a reputation, actually, for, there's the quote unquote random objective ones tends to be, I'd say it's a discussed or debated topic on whether you include it in a tournament pack or not, and so on and so forth. But this is the third one you picked. Yeah. You want to go into what this one is, what shifting objectives is, and why you picked it?
Yeah, so there's 2 things that you kind of want to teach out of this battle plan. One is within the battle plan itself, and the other is how to play the game. So in this battle plan, you still have a relatively straightforward deployment. It's still a rectangle. The difference is that it's contained into a smaller area. So for some players, this might be their really first introduction into your territory versus your opponent's territory in terms of some rules, in terms of how you get to place some of your faction terrain in a very limited space. Now, Total Conquest is a limited space, but it's still a quarter of the board. This is not a quarter of the board. Not even close.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's going to be one thing that you're going to learn, but more importantly, from the battle plan perspective, is this is your first introduction into randomness within a mission in and of itself. The randomness is kept relatively low, down to a D3, right, where one objective every battle round is going to be your primary, and that's going to be worth more points than the rest of them. You still have a criteria to score more points from, I believe it's battle line, that are going to be near that objective. But you are going to have to take into account every battle round where that primary is and what it is that you're going to do about that. Now, the reason that you do want to learn how to play a variable mission is because there are tons of them. A lot of them are, variable scoring over the course of, the length of a game in terms of you rolling a dice for it. Star Strike, where they land when it was rolling the 2d6 and you had that heat map of where it could go.
I liked that one.
Ooh, it's a good mission, but you got to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a, here you go, little Timmy, third game. Hope you can do like statistical Sigma charts and plot out where things are gonna land.
Right.
Maybe not. This one, they're fixed where they are. They're all always scoring, but it's just how do you get to the threshold of winning enough game, of getting enough points to win that game. So that's what you're asking your opponent to do in that mission. Cool, awesome, great. This mission, from a gameplay perspective, where the other two are, kind of forcing you to spread out, right? Where Total Conquest has them in the four corners of the board, and Border War has the two that are kind of naturally onto the way to the fourth one that you're interested in. This one, all three of them are right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be an interesting challenge for players, where, I keep preaching the movement phase wins you the game, but then I give you this mission that there's really no movement outside of, maybe the first battle round in a lot of cases. Like, the line is set. What do you do with that? Are you going to be the kind of player that's just going to set the line and hold and take the fight as you get it? Or are you going to be a player that is going to be very patient with your movements to try and isolate and remove pieces at a time? Are you gonna pick one point and say this is the pinion on which my arm will rotate around, and is it the right one?
Mm-hmm.
You have these objectives that are moving in and around in a not very complicated way, right? It's just, this isn't shifting, this isn't a relocation orb where you have to have a high-end education in calculus to plot out where it was going to go. It's just three on a line.
Right.
All of them are worth something. One of them's worth more. How are you going to commit your battle line? Are you going to commit them first? Is that what you're going to set the line with? Are you going to go hard charging in? What are you going to do? So, you're familiar with some risk reward from the mission before. You're familiar with movement from the mission before. You're familiar with how the game works. But here you have to do some kind of applied learning. You have learned these things in the context of another space. How does it work in something that is familiar but unexplored? And that's something that you kind of want their new player brain to hopefully connect those synapses and understand where the value in all those things just occurred in something that looks different.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I think that's where that one goes. It's I really would recommend staying away from like the super random ones where your objective value is based on dice rolls, where Star Strike as being an early mission to teach. Now it's very simple to explain how the scoring works, but it's difficult for a lot of folks to understand in the early part of their gaming venture into this hobby that the first 3 turns really don't mean very much. Turns 4 and 5 in Star Strike is where you make your money. Now, you can win games in turns 1, 2, and 3. That's totally fine. But game ain't over until, the last battle round. 15 points are on the board.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Right. I like what Nuke Doctor here is saying, because this is actually like close to what my strategy is. Like you're talking about like sort of like the applied strategy here. What Nuke Doctor says is shifting is nice too, because it has a nice alternate like victory point strategy. In that, like, maybe I can't take the primary, but I can hold 2.
Yeah.
If you're holding 2 with your battle line, you just need it to bounce once to one of the 2 you're holding, and now you're winning that game. So like you can actually, like, you have like this sort of alternate win con. You're really, like, this is a puzzle. This is what I really like about this battle plan, is it's a puzzle. I see my opponent's army. Are they controller, or are they beatdown, right? Like some of my Magic the Gathering terms. Like, are they going to be the aggressor? Are they playing an aggressive list, or are they an aggressive player, or are they going to be a little bit more of a control player, a little bit more patient, reserved? Like, so now I'm trying to get a read on my opponent, because depending on if they're like an aggressor, like can I jabate them towards the primary and then just try to go scoop 2 and hold it? Like you're already like it's a puzzle to solve, and I really enjoy that type of gameplay personally. I don't.
And
Go ahead.
It's a puzzle, right? I totally agree with that notion. It's a puzzle that, as you look at it, it's very simple, right? The idea of it, very straightforward. But the longer you look at it, the more you realize that there is quite a bit of depth to that puddle.
Oh yeah.
To that puzzle, rather, than you had understood on first observation.
Right. So how many, when you're teaching somebody, now obviously it's going to vary player to player. How many, like, do you go 1, 2, 3? Okay, I play Border Wars, then I play this, and then I play this. Do you just go 1, 2, 3, line them up, over the course of a couple of weekends? Is there an amount of games you want to get them in ideally before you're like, all right, I release you to the wild, go to your LGS and/or tournaments? Like, is there an amount?
There's times where we'll play that Border War game, and they're like, all right, let's go to tournaments. Let's fucking go.
Yeah.
And you know what? Cool.
Right.
Great. We'll play some games in the lead up to it, but they get the idea what the rules are, and they're kind of folks who are oriented towards just like, throw me in the deep end, I'll figure it out.
Right.
Cool. Love those people. But there are also people who like really want to get a firm understanding of what everything is, and those are folks who are probably going to come by, every weekend, every other weekend, in better circumstances.
Right.
Or we're going to meet up at the store, and we'll play some games, or they'll play some other folks, in the middle time, because chances are they're hanging around. They've met a lot of folks. I have folks stop by my house sometimes and just hang out, kind of thing. Again, in better times.
Right.
I remember the yester time, the long ago years.
Right.
Where, like, these people are familiar with each other, and just like we said, kind of more towards the top of this conversation, people that I trust to, be good teachers and be good stewards of our group and our community. But those people, I will kind of walk them through the different ones, and I'll make a decision on if I'm going to play the same battle tome every time I see them, right? Because they're going to be playing the same thing. They might want to see the same army every time. There's going to be folks where I adjust, what it is that's in front of them every time. I give them a different puzzle to solve. But that's based on the person that you're dealing with, which will ultimately lead it into the secret fourth battle. But it depends. Like what a terrible vague answer that is, but that's the truth of it.
Right.
It's about knowing the person that's, standing on the opposite side of the table from you, and you talk about it all the time where you're spending a lot of time with this person on the other side of the table from you at at a tournament hall, at your gaming store, just in the same way that you're introducing them to the community. This is a person that you should probably get to know to a certain degree. What's important to them, and even if it just remains in the context of the game, that's huge and that's important. Now, maybe you walk away and you're gonna be best friends, and you're gonna stand up in each other's weddings, and that'll be its own terrific adventure that came out of this. Awesome, cool, great.
Right.
But you're spending time with this person. You're not just teaching them the game. This is somebody, in the same way that we were all new to the hobby and someone introduced it to us, whether they were incredibly experienced or just one of your friends that said, hey, I got this cool thing for Christmas, you want to play it with me. You were new too, and it's important to bring them along, the bringing them along as a hobbyist.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, this is a social game. It's one of the things that makes it, I think, a little bit different than some of the other games out there. I mean, when you're teaching somebody Age of Sigmar, it's almost also rather important that you teach them to be okay with the social aspects of it, not just all the rules too. You're having a conversation, you're playing this game, and it's pretty awesome. We have a secret.
I mean,
Go ahead.
Oh, before we get to that, there are some awesome stories that I have come across in my time in this hobby of nerds, right? Because that's what most of us are. The island of misfit toys that come in, and some of us have better social skills than others. Where there have been guys in the different groups that I've been in who, by and large, have had a lot of, I don't want to go as far to say as there being disorders that you're dealing with, but people who had at least social anxieties, around the social interactions, and we have, as clubs, put our arms around them and said, we're gonna help you break this fear that you have in this place where you're comfortable. And I've watched folks who just couldn't talk to anybody become mainstays in our club, and when folks come in, now they're the person who's happy to talk about what you got in front of you and all those kinds of things. And that is one of those things that we kind of lose when we're talking about the competitive side of this game, right? Because you have these small windows and these small snapshots into these people and these groups that you deal with. I mean, think about Isaiah. Isaiah started at 16, going to tournaments, and folks who have been going to tournaments for a while, if you sit back and put on your remembering hat, will remember this really shy kid who was really good at Warhammer, but he had a really hard time communicating with a lot of folks. Just being 16 years old, man. I remember being that too.
You're around a lot of adults too, right? Like you're around a lot of adults.
Yeah,
I mean, that could be pretty
intimidating.
A lot of adults. Just on the face. Yeah.
He's far and away the youngest person at most events, up until pretty recently.
Yeah.
But he's a young man who's in college now, and when you think about that person from when he got started to where he is now, totally different. And while I can't attribute all of it to this hobby, I don't think it would be unreasonable to say that this community is a big part of that.
Right.
In bringing people into being more comfortable with themselves. I mean, even I, over the last 5 years, became more comfortable with myself as a product of this community.
Yeah.
Just being who I am.
Right.
And that is butt-kicking monster who wants to take your soul at the table.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, you're also that, but you're not just that.
No, I think that's the person I found.
Oh, is that? Right on. Right on. Are we ready for our secret, hidden fourth battle plan?
Secret fourth battle plan.
All
I
right.
know we only promised you 3, but there's one that comes into this knowing the person situation.
All right. Let's see. Not cooperating. There we go. Yeah, he's holding it up on his camera now. The open war deck. What is this strange artifact you have here?
So I don't even know if this is a product you can still buy. TBD, I didn't look it up. But so what this is, the open war deck, is a way for you to make your own missions. And this is one of the best things you can do if you and your buddies are beer and pretzels guys and optimizing your armies like really isn't your prerogative and you want every game to feel totally different. Because the 18 battle plans out of the mission, or the 18 missions out of the General's Handbook, I'm not going to lie to you. You play them a couple times, they're really the same game over and over. And chances are you're playing with the same couple of people who are playing kind of the same couple of armies, sum total, right? Because most people in this game are not super collectors where they own one of everything from every army that they have and can play whatever they want. Those people are few and far between. What you have, though, with the open war cards is you have, well, first off, a bunch of cards. Who doesn't love a good physical product?
Yeah.
But what this does is you have a couple of different things that you do with it. And there's a couple of things in it that I would recommend staying away from because they're stupid. But you can play the game however you want. It's up to you. First one is deployment cards. Now, what you have with this is just a number of different kind of deployments. And some are going to look super familiar, and some are going to look super weird. And you know what? That's okay.
Yeah, you're looking at your various configurations. For those of you on pure audio, you're looking at your various configurations of rectangles, and then every now and then like an arrowhead or a sphere.
Yeah, look at this one. A circle in the middle with triangles on the side. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But again, the caution I would put here is this is you and your buddies are super chill. The competitive side of it is not terribly important to either
Yeah,
of you.
there's a chevron deployment there, I see.
Yeah. Well, it's a chevron where one side is the triangle and then the other side is the negative space.
Right.
Here's a nice old one with a circle cut into some rectangles. Surrounded on both sides. Right? So looking at these, Meph, right, you would agree that these are pretty unusual.
Yeah.
So you can take these deployments and overlay the actual rules for objectives over the top of it. That's fair game. If you don't feel like doing that, they give you these objective cards. And you can have a couple of them out on the battlefield, and some of them are real simple because these were pre-points in many cases.
Mm-hmm.
So you get things like drawn and quartered. Each player scores 1 victory point at the end of their turn for every objective they control. The player with the most victory points at the end of the 5th battle round wins. But in order to do that, when you get started, both players roll a dice, starting with the player who rolled the highest. Then take it in turns to set up 2 objectives each, anywhere more than 12 inches from the center of the battlefield, more than 6 inches from the edge of the battlefield, and more than 18 from other objectives. You're putting those objectives down yourself. You could do whatever you want.
Right.
These form the basis of a lot of the narrative games that we set up as events or just within our group. When we play big, huge, stupid games, these typically form the basis of what it is.
When you and Bryce do the 20,000 point mega battle, are we going to see the open war deck?
We very well might. There's just things in here that are good, right? Each player adds up the value of the wounds characteristics of all enemy models that their army slays during the battle, doubling the value of any models that have the hero or monster keyword. At the end of the 5th battle round, the player with the highest total wins the battle. Now, what you can do is you can assign these things to be different values, and you can play with 3 out on the table. Fine. Cool. Do with that what you will. Oh, but that's not all, Mephisto.
I like
You
this.
have
Like a sales pitch for a product that you can't buy anymore.
Make your own, man. Like, if it's a product you can't buy anymore, I'm sure that there's just like a PDF of it
I'm
somewhere.
sure there's some means the internet can help you with to get these. Also, Nuke Doctor saying is that there's an open war generator in GHB 20.
There you go. But that would require you to look at something that's not the points in the General's Handbook, and I'm not quite sure why Sean knows that. Then you have the twist cards, and basically what this is you and your buddy have played every deployment and every objective, and you wanna spice things up in your games. So what they are is they change what it is that's going on. So one of them here, Wrath of the Gods. Each player can roll 3 dice at the start of their hero phase. For each roll of a 6, they can pick a separate enemy unit and inflict D3 mortal wounds on it. It's just like weird battlefield effects. Some of them are a meeting battle. Half your army gets set up, half of it's in reserve, and it comes on one of your table edges in at the end of the first battle round or second battle round or whatever. Here's a fun one. Double or nothing. Roll a dice. On a roll of 1 to 3, no twist cards are used for this battle. On a 4 to 6, draw 2 more twist cards and apply both.
Oh my.
Right, here's a real simple one. Add 1 to all casting and binding rolls. However, if any of the results are a double, they suffer a mortal wound. If it was a double 1, they suffer D3.
Yeah.
Okay. Nothing too crazy about that. Just some extra rules you can throw on top. The next thing you have are ruses, and this is where we get into the category of, like, you really probably shouldn't be playing with these. You can, but these, the more you look at them, the more age they show in the kind of gameplay that you're looking at. Like, play this card in your hero phase to set 1 terrain feature within 3 inches of a friendly model on fire. For the rest of the battle, any models, friend or foe, that end their movement phase either in or on the terrain feature are slain. Well, okay.
There's how do I put this? There is some value in learning to be adaptive to like the truly wacky of Warhammer. Nuke Doctor saying we used the Twist and Rouse deck at Holy Wars one year. Some of them are mental.
Yeah, like Revenge. Play this card if your general is slain, which if you have this card, you will be doing. For the rest of the battle, you can add 1 to the wound rolls made for all of the models in your army.
There you go.
Here you go. You can kill my general. Sounds good. He was a 90-point Nighthaunt model. Now, all of my Nighthaunt models wound on 2s.
It's funny because I mean, you're already talking about a game where the competitive balance is, a lot of parity in Battleplans is what we look for. We want parity for that competitive balance because, the rules are made up and the points don't matter on some level eventually of Age of Sigmar, right? Like, so you're looking to those Battleplans for like the context of the parity. By being random and really, if I was talking about a tournament pack, I would never use these.
Oh, never, never, ever, never. And we have one that's even worse in just a second. But yes.
In terms of like a game that I'm playing with my friends to learn Warhammer, to test my metal, to to puzzle solve. I love solving puzzles. Like, I would do this. I have a love-hate relationship with something like Relocation Orb. Like, I hate Relocation Orb in a tournament pack. I love it with just playing it with a friend. Because, like, you're like, okay, now I need to figure out a way to get my entire army over there.
Over there.
And just like, well, what does that even look like? Can I even do this? Like, you know, like the having to be in those like situations that you usually can't plan for. You just have to find yourself in a strange situation or a difficult situation to learn how to adapt or know, you know, how to deal with the stress and how to like overcome those situations. Um, like it's I don't know. Like I think there's value in that because again, eventually you play enough battle plans, you're like, okay, I know what this is. But there's no way to really prepare you for all the random situations you may find yourself in at a tournament down the line. You just have to end up in weird situations. And having something that kind of forces weird situations, I think, has value. Nuke Doctor saying, same. I lost every tournament game of Orb that I played. I think it's his love-hate. Anyway, you said you got to... Oh, there's more! I see Nagash is just there.
So these are the sudden death cards, and these are the ones that I would recommend you kind of stay away from. I believe the original means of applying sudden death cards was if your opponent had double the number of models as you. And again, we're talking like this is old Sigmar stuff. But you know, something that might be kind of cool is you and your opponent gamble how many points you're going to bring to the game. And the player that has less, if it's, 500, 1,000 points less, whatever, they'll get it. Like, maybe then you give them a sudden death card, really outnumber them kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because there's things like Assassinate. Play this card if you slay the enemy hero or monster that has the highest wounds characteristics of any enemy model that is currently on the battlefield. If you do so, you immediately win the game. Separate from the objective cards we just talked about.
Right.
Play this card if you endure. Play this card if you have at least one model still on the battlefield at the end of the 5th battle round. Okay. If you're playing 1,000 points down and you still have a model at the end of the game, man, you deserve to win. So this is a really cool tool. If you can still buy it, if not, yay, internet. General's Handbook has, as you pointed out, kind of a means of doing this. This is really great for your folks who are way more interested in having cool armies, playing cool games, not super worried about optimizing your list, but wanting to play games and feeling like they're gonna be different. The tournament grinder life is very much totally its own entity, and you got to be wired towards that to really be able to enjoy every game, playing from a very strict mission set.
Right. Nuke Doctor, those cards are so OG they don't even have major/minor win language. I think Brendan
It's just outright.
I think Brendan busted out the cards because he just wanted to flex on everybody. That's all this was. This was just like what wedging how OG he is into the topic. Like, look at these cards.
It's so much of that is some of my absolute fondest memories of this game are in that pre-points era of Age of Sigmar, where we had to figure out what a fair, reasonable game looked like. Because we were all coming from Warhammer Fantasy battles, and points are the currency that we built this construct on. And we realized that War Scrolls really isn't equivalent, and wounds isn't necessarily the best. Like, some combination thereof ended up kind of being the right way to look at it. Because you could just run 120 goblins. There's no cap. You're just like, this is my one War Scroll of goblins, and I took 90 of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I brought Arkin the Black, and he can summon a unit every turn for free, and so I'm going to summon 5 units of Morghast, because, yeah, I can't cast the same spell, but I have 3 casting attempts, and I can summon one kind of Morghast, and then the other kind of Morghast, and then I'm going to try and summon a Mourngul. And you're like, cool. Thanks, buddy. But some of the best games I have ever played of Age of Sigmar are where you and your opponent, back to the turn 0 idea, really negotiated out what that game was going to look like. You know, you drew up an open war game, and you just played. And there was a game, you know, back when, you know, you were deciding things on like how many wounds you were able to pull off the board. I won a game with 1 wound on 1 ogre boy left. And that was it. And it came down to a single dice roll at the end. And I want to say it was like a d6 damage. And you got to roll a 4 up to kill him. And you roll a 3. And that's it. That the whole game came down to that 1 dice roll at the end. If he doesn't roll a 4 up, he loses by 1 wound. Like,
well, I think. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Just super fun memories, and having to be creative in that space, I think really pushes people to kind of ask themselves how they're going to enjoy this hobby with their friends, and how they're gonna, you know, people how to do this.
Yeah, I think first off, shout outs to the Bucks glass you're rocking there. But
Thank you. It was on sale in traditional Midwest fashion. I have to tell you that I got it at a discount.
yeah, that's right. No, I think you know, we both have a little bit of a competitive lean to how we view the game, and when we talk about teaching, I think we probably have a mind toward like a competitive play eventuality, I think, or at least not necessarily like tournament grinder going for top tables, but I'm probably.
But people want to win.
Yeah, people want to win, and I'm probably, if I'm teaching somebody, like, I'm already telling them tournaments are great, and like I'm probably thinking down the line, I might end up teaching that person to prep for a tournament too, right? Like, because that's a little bit different style from just teaching Age of Sigmar.
That's another
a whole other
7-hour episode.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a different thing, and talked with Jake last week from Detroit Warhammer a little bit about that actually. So, but this is just teaching someone Age of Sigmar, and I do think at that like sort of holistic, sort of basic, get you into Age of Sigmar level, part of the teaching isn't just, hey, here's the rules and here's what the game does. I think part of teaching is like sort of imparting joy on the person. Like you're sort of like you're passing on that joy that you feel in the game, and you're showing them ways to like have that and engage with that too, which is why I kind of like that you busted out the deck there at the end, because it's just
plot twist.
Yeah, well, there's something about that one. You know, we all have those memories, these like sort of standout things, and it could be in a tournament setting. It could be like, you know, oh man, I was playing for the win, you know. But there's always this like this wacky situation, you know. I remember, you know, shaking hands with Kyle just to kind of reset, talking. I was already talking about him tonight, and we like broke the tower, you know, like just shaking. Our handshake was so mighty. We had this like you know, I think there was a photo. It was like what 8 Morghasts on the table because I had to because I couldn't get my 10 Black Knights tabletop ready in time, so I had to grab what I had, which was 2 Morghasts. And you know, like I think you commented on that photo, like in retrospective, like this is the most Morghasts I've seen on the table, like at one time. And he's like, I've ran. He's like, I've run more than 6, and you're like, no, Mephisto's 2 are right there. Like, checkmate. There's just, it's stuff like that where, like, you know, part of the joy of AOS, it is that community, it is that camaraderie, it's those wacky situations. We play a dice game, an imperfect, glorious dice game, you know, and I talk about the sharp edges, you know, flaws as features. You got to experience some of that stuff. You got to, I think, learn to enjoy some of that, or you're going to have a really long slog in AOS, you know.
But I don't think there's any reason that you have to go the long way to anything nowadays, right? Like there is, to take this train in a totally different direction. You can absolutely curate your hobby experience nowadays. There is a podcast for everyone and everything, in every way, shape, and form. There are YouTubers and Twitch streamers and podcasters and bloggers and people on Twitter, where if you just want to see cool models being painted, man, we'll hook you up with an Instagram account. Like that is where the best pictures of models go.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to hang out in the tournament grinder circuit, I'll tell you which of these people to follow on Twitter and who to go listen to on Podbean, and off you go. If you want a real middle of the road experience, pick and grab these folks that are worth following, and you're going to listen to this and you're going to want to do that, and you can go as wide as you want or stay as narrow as you want. There's something for everybody at this point in time, which is, as you think about like the younger versions of ourselves, totally unthinkable. Like there was the Daka boards, and like that was it. Like that was the forum.
I was on Bolter
Warhammer.
and Chainsaw, and we had things to say about you, Daka folk.
Whatever.
I think I was some version of Mephisto on there too. I might have been more Mephiston or something like that, but yeah. No, I was on there, and the Raw versus Ride debates that I laugh at now. I just laugh at because the place I was talking from was someone who played with hard-nosed that guys who were out that guying each other in a competitive 40K local game store where like our best one went off to the tournaments, and then came back and told us tales of his conquest, but how he ultimately lost in the last round, right? Like,
Sure.
yeah, like that was the thing, and
yeah,
so like
we call those mid-table heroes.
right. But like my heart was like really never in 40K like super hard, and coming back around to it later, I didn't have, in those forum days, you didn't really have that broader community. You had your local scene, and that was kind of it. There might have been a couple man, I don't even remember being on YouTube in that time period. Casting my mind back, like
there were definitely people who like did Warhammer battle reports. Man, this is gonna date myself. Did you ever watch Fritz? There was Fritz and Jowl Balls were like the quintessential 40K content creators. Fritz was on his Necrons and his Eldar, and Jowl Balls was always painting Blood Angels, and he had a hobby blog.
And this sounds familiar now.
My buddy played Blood Angels.
This sounds familiar now.
But like that was it. Like it was them. It was blue table painting. It was mini wargaming, and add the list. Like those are the 4 people that that were doing this at any kind of scale. I'm sure there were more, right? But
yeah,
man, it feels like you can't, once you make that Google search and you start watching stuff, it feels like it's just an ocean of content. There's no reason that you have to take the long road to anything right now. If you want to become a lore expert, man, they got shows for you,
right,
where you can just sit and spend all day listening to Doug from 2 Plus Tough tell you about the words in the books and and the setting, right?
Right. Or I got a shout out to Mars, Takeover Mars in Chat Gang, who started kind of a lore channel, where he's just playing Vermintide and Total Warhammer in the background while reading these excerpts from books that he finds cool, and I'm like, this is the most. Isn't that just Warhammer? It's just this is pure Warhammer. This is just, that's that doom and darkness in his truck telling me on his cell phone video, I just can't stop thinking about Age of Sigmar. That for me is always kind of that for me is always kind of the sweet spot of Warhammer. You can't stop thinking about it so hard that you're reading it while you're
You
playing
record
video.
a video in your truck.
Yeah, yeah. Like you're like I'm playing video games and I'm like, but I need to read the Warhammer. It just for me that's I love that, and you're 100% right. There's so much content out there. You can really curate your experience, and I think you know, man, learning Warhammer is just the start of a really great journey. Um, the only thing I really have to add is to those of you that are looking to teach people to play, look to be that ambassador, not so much the gatekeeper. I think that that's a very important distinction. Brendan, any final thoughts? Anything you want to shout out, put on blast? I mean, obviously, Cubic Shenanigans, everyone. Like, that's how you're going to actually get your Battletome reviews. I don't do them really. I just send you over to Brendan and like a couple of other folks out there. But yeah, anything,
Yeah,
any
so
final soapbox moments? Anything you got to get off your chest here before we get out of here?
I'll do the Cubic Shenanigans pitch real quick. We are a Warhammer podcast. We do primarily Age of Sigmar. We do talk 40K from time to time. We will delve into box games periodically, but I would put it at 80% of our content is Age of Sigmar. It's what I'm most passionate about, and Dan, the main host, has become pretty passionate about. When the show started, it was I was just going to be kind of a support function. Every once in a while, they were going to talk about Age of Sigmar, and like all things I get my hands on, it becomes the main focus of what it is that we're doing. So Dan is a former educator, and I am in my professional life all about explaining things to people and getting them on board and getting them trained to do very specific and sometimes complicated tasks. So we are oriented towards primarily looking at a battle tome and explaining to you what they mean in the context of each other and kind of like how you can start taking these war scrolls for what they are. I think, in terms of recent stuff, our Daughters of Cain battle tome review I thought was excellent. Uh, the Heat Knights of Slanesh one was a little bit tougher for us to do. I do think we found some bright spots and some things for people to shine their light on and be interested in.
You just
But
couldn't
we're
get it.
always
You just couldn't get that one out before I went on Warhammer Weekly, could you? You had to wait until the week after. I was just gonna like take everything you said and just say it in my own Mephisto way. I
well,
actually.
you say that like I didn't listen to yours and go, okay, yeah, that's a good point. Uh,
Oh, it's weird because I went into that episode. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about this now. I went into that episode and I was going to I had a bit I was gonna do is anytime I was about to feel bad about something, I was just gonna talk about how great the model looked and just let Vince talk the whole time. That was my plan. But Tom, when we're in the pre-show, Tom was already worn out. He has like a million kids and like a whole life. And so he was just he was already
sure.
man, I'm tired. And I'm just like, okay, Tom, so you're not gonna help me out this time, buddy. All right, cool. Now I
You
have to
you had
talk.
to you had
Yeah,
to pull that cart.
yeah, I had to do that. No, no, you're right. I love your show. You guys do a great job of teaching. It is. Even if I didn't know you, it'd still be one of my favorites because it's the way you guys do it. Like you said, you have your teaching background, and I cut you off mid Slanesh. You said Slanesh was a slog, but yeah,
Yeah,
continue.
that one was a little bit tougher for us. Obviously, some folks who have been around these different podcast grinds as they were, right? Like all the same shows with the same content come out at the same time. Like that's just the way it is. There's a lot of negativity around it. I think some of it's deserved. I think some of it is unwarranted. You will find that I consistently try to be level-headed and look for the the way to get the most miles out of something because one of the things that that I've talked about with you, Meph, is that the books are there's always going to be someone who's super jacked up about it, regardless of how competitive it is or isn't. And
Hmm.
there's going to be somebody who loves that book, and they're going to sit down and be like, "I love this book. How far can I take it?" And hopefully, we kind of push people in that direction. I obviously am on the much more competitive end of things, and Dan is much more oriented towards the fun end of things. He's taken a lot
I
of
like
steps
that. I like
forward.
that you make it like a continuum. Like it's like it's this is a linear scale. You're either fun or you're competitive. There's no like.
Well, I mean, there is a certain orientation to
I
it.
I
Like,
know I know. It's
yeah, there. I have been accused of not being particularly fun to play in a lot of instances.
right.
And you know what? I don't care. So,
I love we just like undermine 2 hours of a podcast about teaching people to enjoy the game and play battle plans that'll help them enjoy the game. And
yeah, but the difference is I'm very unfun to play when I'm, when I'm in those kind of trophy rounds. When I'm sitting down and I'm teaching and like we're playing that game, cool man, whatever. But when Sean and I are, knuckles down, staring at each other across that table, that bead of stress sweat coming down, and I was talking about this on Twitter, like 2 weeks ago or something. I mean, Sean and I barely spoke to each other over the course of the game. Sean's a friend. Like, that's, he's a dude I love playing, but it was a lot of, interesting. Okay. And then, like, we would do something and be like, okay. And like, that was most of the game. And, we'd talk about stuff here and there, but, you'd look to the table to the left and everyone's, hanging out and enjoying, some of their last beers of the weekend, and we're just, yes. And if you're not oriented in that way, in terms of like that's how you enjoy the game,
that's true.
I am not fun at all to play in that regards. And because you're staring at a brick wall of somebody who wants to do the winning, and if you want to be my best friend at a tournament, man, I got bad news for you. The table is not the place to meet me.
Nuke Doctor's like, for the record, that game was fun.
I thought so too.
It's a different gear. It is a different gear. I see. I can shift gears. Like I talk about this with Tobin Prime, how like he wants to play that like very methodical thing, and like the banter cuts to a little bit of a minimum, and then it's just like looking at the puzzle on the table and then solving it, and that's a little bit of a different. That's a little bit of a different experience. You get a different version of Meph if that's like what ends up happening at the table. I can change that gear. Not everybody can. I'm not saying this makes me awesome because like my gear shift doesn't go all the way up to the 6th gear yet of competitive play, but I can switch into like the 5th gear, right? Like, so I can do that. But usually I'm in that like 4th gear, like just I'm getting away from my family. Like I'm having beers and I'm playing Warhammer and.
Sure.
Sometimes
totally
I
fair,
win.
and that's
Yeah, sometimes I win trophies like hammers, and growlers. I know. You got the double dragon, man. I can't throw shade. But
but yeah, so in terms of closing thoughts, one, check out Cubic Shenanigans. I'd love if you listened. We were really lucky in that we had a huge content listenership increase over the course of the pandemic for a reason that we cannot explain.
yeah, rub it in, buddy. All my stuff is down. I still haven't recovered from my pre-pandemic numbers.
If I had an answer for you, I would give it to you. We made stuff up like over the like. Dan and I would sit down and be like, okay, well, what are we gonna talk about? And like, battle line units, and that's some of the spots we were in. So in terms of what I want to plug, it's that. As far as the rest of it goes, love your hobby. Be cool to everybody. Be the ambassador, like you were talking about. This hobby doesn't grow. It doesn't become this huge, awesome, sprawling thing on its own. It requires individual inputs, and when everybody's doing that thing, that's when you really start seeing things take off.
Mm-hmm.
General's Handbook came out, and 30-person events were huge and awesome and exciting. And pre-pandemic, we're talking about Adepticon teams was approaching 400, right? Like,
yeah.
That's but that's the result of a lot of individual efforts.
Yeah.
And as Meph was saying at the front end of this, uh, we're going to see a lot of new people after once we're allowed to go
Yeah.
out and see each
Oh,
other
it's gonna be
again.
floodgates. The floodgates are gonna open. There's people have just been hobbying for like an entire calendar year. They want to play games. They are going to want
Yeah.
to play. Um, I
And what happens to this hobby is a direct result of what each of you as individuals choose to do. A lot of folks are going to be new, and so I would hope that you take to heart some of the things that we talked about here on ways to introduce folks to the game side of this.
right on, man. Well, I love you, brother. Thank you so much for being on. This is it's been too long since our last like uh, Meph and Brendan hangout show. So I was happy we got to talk about something I think that's going to be of a little bit more substance too. So instead of just gushing over how much we both love Death Armies for like just 2 solid
Yeah,
hours.
we do. I'm sure we'll do that when the vampires come out, and we'll do one of those 3-hour shows where, like when we had the previews for Bone Reapers, and we were like, okay, so I saw a very blurry picture. It looks like this spell casts on a 6. Uh,
that, oh man, that stuff's just fun. That stuff it's just fun to do. All right, chat gang, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. You are the show within the show, the reason we do this thing. Snitbag dropping 1,000 RDP to remind everyone that chat gang ain't none to fuck with. You know it. Be excellent to yourselves, be excellent to each other, and drink your milk, pay your taxes. We will catch you next time, everyone. Good night, everybody. Good night, Brendan.